Farm Bureau helps protect its members in more ways than you might think. They've always been the voice of agriculture in Arkansas, working on behalf of folks like me when nobody else would. And Farm Bureau stands for the values that Arkansas families care about. They've protected my right to farm and make a living, which helps everybody who likes food on the table. You know what they say, Arkansas counts on agriculture, and agriculture counts on Farm Bureau.
Well, Arkansas was poised to be politics central this week with former President Bill Clinton making a major policy speech on health care in Little Rock, but international relations with Syria got in the way. Still, it made for a busy week of activity on the state's political front. Joining me to talk politics is Andrew DeMillo, the chief Capitol correspondent for the Associated Press. Good to have you back with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Let's begin with all of the Arkansas congressional delegation, almost to a T, maybe one undecided still, but almost everyone has said that they are going to oppose this action in Syria, with the exception of Tom Cotton. Tom Cotton agreeing with President Barack Obama. Is this opposite day or something? What do we got going on here?
Yeah, I know, it's cats and dogs, living in harmony kind of thing. But yeah, you're correct. Among the delegation right now, the only hard yes we have is Tom Cotton, who was elected and is running against Mark Pryor on kind of the anti-Obama sentiment and saying that he disagrees with the president on just about everything, except for this really big foreign policy issue.
Why do you think he's as hawkish as he is on this? I mean, what's your kind of read in terms of why he got out so early on this? I mean, an op-ed in the Washington Post. I mean, it didn't seem like it took him much time to reach that conclusion.
Yeah, and it was actually even earlier than that. I covered a speech with Cotton about a week or so ago, which was several days before the president said he had decided to take action and was going to seek congressional approval, where Cotton went to a Lions Club in Danville and really kind of laid out the case of why he thinks there should be military action against Syria because of this chemical weapons attack that killed more than 1,400 civilians. And he's really kind of laid out this very detailed argument, talking about how this America's credibility is on the line. And a big part of his argument is that part of this is a message to to other countries, especially Iran, that there are consequences for using chemical weapons or for crossing a red line that the U.S. Marks.
And Cotton hasn't missed a chance to ding President Obama every chance he gets in terms of making this. I mean, he still has made the point that he doesn't think the president has shown leadership over the years on this. He doesn't even seem to have faith that the president will carry out and execute the military mission that he's seeking approval for. That strikes me as a little odd.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because you see the other Republicans in the delegation in their opposition are citing kind of some of the same problems that Congressman Cotton is citing in terms of they think that the president has bungled this. They don't really have confidence in him. Cotton, he's saying he supports military action. He's not necessarily saying he supports the president, to a T. And so, that there is kind of an interesting split there. And this is kind of one of those areas where, traditional party politics you don't see playing as much with the delegation as you've seen with other votes here.
Well, there are a lot of reasons why we have heard some of the other officials, some of the other elected officials in our federal delegation have said that they're leaning towards no or a hard no, and something miracle argument's going to have to persuade them one way or the other. Let me rattle off a few of those. The nation's war-weary, too many unanswered questions. Where does it start? Where does it stop? Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? I mean, do you think that this is kind of them, particularly the Republicans, just playing partisan politics? Do you think that they're listening to some constituents and they're playing out what they're hearing from people back home? I mean, Tim Griffin, for instance, has said it's been overwhelmingly, don't do this.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of both, but especially constituent reaction to it. Mark Pryor, who is undecided. He hasn't really said he's leaning either way. Followed him around on Labor Day when he went to a Labor Day picnic, and he actually went to some different tables of this picnic, was asking voters there, what do you think about this? Most of the responses he was getting were very negative responses. People who were saying we don't need to be the world's police. People saying we don't want another Iraq or Afghanistan type situation.
I would think there would be some people that would be saying, what is Syria and where is Syria? I mean, not always plugged in.
And I think that might be it. The folks who are calling up are folks who are a lot more plugged in. But there are people who are plugged in on this among voters, And it's like you said, there are a lot of very war-weary voters, after, the past 10 years of seeing us get involved overseas. And Pryor talking with these people really, seemed to be hearing a lot of that. And I think that's partly why you're hearing Pryor express reservations and not really say, where he's going to go on this.
Yeah, I think it's going to kind of come down to, just my personal opinion, is that, you can be a representative and you can vote how your constituents feel, or you can have a contrary position to them and you can try to educate them to your position, which I think is what Cotton has tried to do or plans on doing, and I think that some of the other members of the delegation may be doing something different. Now, on Monday, they are all going to get a briefing in Washington, D.C. Do you think anyone is persuaded, or do you think it hardens their positions?
I think among the delegation we see right now, the one to watch right now, I think, is going to be Pryor. I think he's the only one who hasn't really said, I'm leaning this way, or I'm a hard no. I think just from the comments that we've seen from Crawford, Griffin, and Womack, I think it's going to be a really hard sell for the three of them. Cotton is one of the most vocal advocates on this right now. So I think Pryor is kind of the undecided to watch at this point among the folks getting briefings, and the president is supposed to be addressing the nation next week. That may play into this as well too.
Speaking of the president addressing the nation, let's shift gears. The former president was supposed to address the nation this past week. Syria kind of knocked off the front page what we probably thought at the beginning of this short last week was going to be the dominant political story in Arkansas. Bill Clinton in town to talk about health care reform. You really can't plan for an international, crisis per se, but it knocked it off page one, basically, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. This was definitely overshadowed by Syria. I think this was they wanted to get a lot more attention for this. It still got a lot of national attention, but probably not as much as they were hoping for. This was President Clinton, doing his explanation and defense of the Affordable Care Act. And this is kicking off a series of speeches that administration officials and different allies of the administration are planning to do throughout the fall, as we gear up for implementation, as we gear up for open enrollment of these insurance exchanges. But yeah, I think definitely Syria kind of overshadowed a lot of the news from that.
What was your takeaway from the Clinton speech? I've gauged a lot of feedback from it, but I mean, he did talk about some of the positive aspects of it. He highlighted a few things he thought needed to be reformed or changed, but what was kind of the sense of people walking out of that great hall over there? You and I were there back on press row. They stuck us in the back.
Yep.
But what was your takeaway?
I think some people who were expecting it to be kind of like the Democratic National Convention, kind of this kind of pep rally, type of speech. That's not what it was. This was Clinton really living up to the what President Obama has called him, the Secretary of Explaining Stuff. And it was nearly an hour-long speech going through the history of healthcare, going through the merits of the healthcare law, and also pointing out things that he thinks should be improved, and kind of making this case that even if you oppose the original legislation, drop the repeal efforts, stop fighting these old battles, and focus on ways to improve it instead of constantly voting to repeal it.
And we got the whole, even got a 1-800 number. Had a little infomercial feel there for a little while. And Clinton was 30 minutes late was the other thing too, which was classic.
Big surprise.
So he did talk to a lot about the private option, which is Arkansas's kind of signature piece of taking the federal health care law and making it work at the state level. Do you sense that helped or hurt talking about the private option, particularly in front of this Arkansas audience? I've kind of heard a little bit of mixed reviews from Republicans on that. Yeah,
and the folks coming out of there, we talked to Davy Carter, who he didn't walk away from it sold on the Affordable Care Act. He still says that he thinks it's bad policy, but he still thinks what the private option did was right for Arkansas. I think I think the explanation of private option was more geared toward other states and more of a national audience, because one of the reasons for doing this here in Arkansas, other than it being presidential library being Clinton's home state, is there are supporters of the healthcare law who see Arkansas as an example of what can happen in a Republican trending state, where you can convince people to still oppose the healthcare law, fundamentally, but support implementing parts of it, which is basically what happened here.
All right, he's Andrew DeMillo with the Associated Press. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, after this word from our sponsors, a look at some major business headlines of the last week, including a big surprise on a banking deal, and later, high-speed internet. You like it, you love it, you probably want some more of it. An upcoming conference may be your ticket. I'm Roby Brock. Details when we come back.